We begin today with the Mishnah, the second Mishnah, towards the bottom of Daf Nun Tesam at base. Okay, so here, this Mishnah begins the halachas of the mazik of mavir, fire. This is actually the last mazik that we started with the Dal Davos Nazikin. In the beginning of the Masechta, this is the last one that the Gemara is going to discuss. And as I mentioned, this is the last Perek which discusses the Arba Avos Nazikin. A person that sends, he gives over a coal of fire in the hands of a deaf mute or a shaita, mentally deranged person, or a cotton. So Pater b'dinei yodam, and then this cheresh shaita v'cotton took it out and went and placed it somewhere and caused a fire, and it spread and it damaged. So the person that gave it to him is Pater b'dinei yodam. Here in this world, in the Bezdin, he'll be Pater, but v'chai b'dinei shemayim. But nevertheless, because he was a grama, he caused this damage, so b'dinei shemayim, as the halacha by every grama is, he's still going to be chayiv. Shalach b'yad pikeach. If you give over a coal of fire into the hands of a normal, healthy person, and then that person went and took it and made a fire with it, ha-pikeach chayiv. So this pikeach that did this action is chayiv. There's no concept of shlichus when it comes to such a kind of thing. So here, this pikeach that did it himself is chayiv. Now regarding fire, echad hevi yisoor, one person brings a flame of fire, but that flame of fire cannot sustain itself and it cannot spread. So ve'echad, and then afterwards, someone else, hevi yiseitzim, brought wood so the fire could continue to burn and spread. Hamevi yiseitzim chayiv. The second person that brought the wood to help the fire be able to exist and spread, he's the one that's chayiv. So the point there is that the second one, he's the one that really helped the fire continue, so he's chayiv. Same thing as if it happened in the opposite order, the second one is chayiv. Echad hevi yiseitzim, the first person just brought wood here, just wood alone is not going to do anything, but ve'echad hevi yisor, then a second person comes along and places a flame fire there into this wood. Hamevi yisor chayiv. So the second one that brought the fire, he's going to be the one chayiv. Now, if in a case where you have the wood, you have the fire, but it's a small fire and it's not spreading anywhere, then a third person comes along, ba acher v'libo. Third person comes along and fans the flames of this fire to cause it to spread. Hamalaba chayiv. So then, because it wouldn't spread without him, so the one that fanned the flames of the fire, he'll be chayiv. Lipsa haruach, if the wind came, there was fire, there was wood there, but the fire is not spreading, and then a wind comes and fans the flames of the fire and spreads it, and kulam paturin. The others that, what they did, they're all patur because it wouldn't spread on its own. So here actually there are two pshatim in the Taisvis regarding this wind that came and spread the fire. What is it talking about? Is it talking about a ruach mitzuya, an ordinary wind that came and spread it? Even then you would be patur. But then there's another pshat in Taisus that says, no, that it's tafke by a ruach she'enim mitzuya. If there's an unusual wind that came and spread it, then the ones that left it here are going to be patur. The Gemara will also a little bit discuss this in Taisus connects it to the Gemara, as we'll see. Zok the Gemara with the first case in the Mishnah. A person gave over fire to a cheresh shaita v'katan. What kind of a fire are we talking about? So there's a machlekes about this. And we had this earlier in the Masechta actually more than once. Omer Reish Lakish says, Mishmei Chizkiya. In the name of Chizkiya, Lo Shanu El Shamasa Lo Gacheles. You gave the cheresh shaita v'katan a coal and v'liba. And now the cheresh shaita v'katan himself, he fanned the flames of the fire that's inside this coal and caused the fire. In that case, you say, because you just gave him over a coal that doesn't have a flame of fire here, so therefore if he goes and brings out the flame of fire on his own, so that's why the one that gave it to him will be pater. If you gave him a coal that has mamish, a flame of fire that's already outside of it, chayiv. In such a case, you gave it over to this cheresh shaita v'katan and it damaged, you're going to be chayiv. My time, what's the reason for this? Myself, kagar. It's your actions that when you gave it over, you gave over already a open flame of fire to him. It's your actions that's causing this to damage. However, Rabbi Yechanan argues and says, no, afila masa lo shel heves. Even if you give him a coal which has open flame of fire, pater. You're still going to be pater for the damage that's caused by this. My time, why are you pater in this case? Because tzafsa the cheresh, garmaloi, the tongues of the cheresh, of this deaf mute that takes now this fire, and he places it somewhere and causes it to spread, so you still need that action of his to be done in order for the fire to spread. And so therefore, the one that gave it to him, even though it's a flame of fire, but still, he then takes it and does an action with it himself. It's not you that's bringing this fire there and spreading it. So therefore you're going to be potter. Before we go weiter, we had this earlier in the Masechta, and there the Gemara brought this in, the Machlekes of Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan here is based on what's really the source of the what's the understanding of why you chayiv when you spread a fire. Rish Lakish says you chayiv just like you allow your ox to go out and damage someone, your mamain, which is an ox that damages, similar a fire. When you light a fire and then you allow it to spread, it's your mamain that was mazik someone. So therefore, just like over there, you give over your shirt, you're not guarding your ox properly, and you're chayiv for that. Giving over a flame of fire, is the same thing. So you'll be chayiv. Only if it was a coal and there was no flame of fire there, so then he's mamish, the one that's fanning it, you'll be potter. But Rabbi Yochanan holds that the chiyav by a fire is not because of your mammon. Isha mishum chitzov. It's like your arrow. It's considered to be that the place where the fire spread is your action. It's like you threw the arrow there. So if you're giving over even a flame of fire, but then he has to go and do the action on his own and place it and spread it, so he's still going to be potter for that.
That's only because we don't know what the cotton is going to do.
Okay, the Chereshet of the cotton himself is potter because he's a Chereshet of the cotton, and you are also potter because it's just a grama. It's not. You can't compare it. Yeah, you can't compare it to an arrow, which once you throw it, it flies, and it definitely goes there. Yeah. Now, according to Rabbi Yochanan, when would the person that gave over a fire or for a Chereshet of the cotton, when would you be chayiv? Even Rabbi Yochanan would agree. If you give him over gavze, which are thorns, or today let's say matches, salta, pieces of wood, also small pieces of wood, but not mamish, these little matches, but also pieces of wood, and shrage, and a candle. Right, so a burning candle with the exact materials that are needed to spread this fire. You give over such kind of materials to a Chereshet of a cotton, it's absolutely clear that this is something that he's going to play around with. So therefore, it's mamish you that's causing the fire. So it's not so simple actually to understand the chiluk of the Gemara, the Rishonim ask over here, because sof, even in this case, the Chereshet of a cotton does have to do his own action in order for this fire to then burn and spread. So Rabbi Yochanan holds that the fire is only chayiv if it's mamish like an arrow that you threw. But nevertheless, the hesber that seems over here in the Gemara is that when you give a Chereshet of a cotton even a flame of fire, so the flame of fire is not something that you can expect it'll play around with. Well, he might drop it, he might not, he might take it somewhere. But if you give him over these materials, you give him a candle in his hand, and then matches, and then pieces of wood, this is mamish something literally that you know that it's his nature to play around with this. So therefore it's mamish like your chetz, mamish like you're making this fire. So you will be chayiv even according to Rabbi Yochanan. Then the Mishnah says, Sholach b'yad pikeach, ha-pikeach chayiv. And then the Gemara actually is going to focus on the next part of the Mishnah, v'chulu. The Mishnah afterwards said that if you have different people that are bringing different parts, one is bringing the fire, the other is bringing the wood, and the third person, liba, he fanned the flames of the fire. So the Gemara here actually says that there are two ways in the versions of how to read the Mishnah. So Amar Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, man the tona liba, one that reads the Mishnah like we had at liba, which means that he's blowing and fanning the flames of the fire. Lo mishtabish. That's not a mistake. That's a proper gears in the Mishnah. Man the tani niba, one that reads it with a nun niba, also lo mishtabish, also is not making a mistake. And the Gemara explains what these two words would mean. Man the tani liba lo mishtabish is not a mistake. Tichsiv belabaseish. By fire it says labaseish is the flame of fire when you blow the flame of fire. With a nun niba is also not a mistake because the chsiv boire nivs vasayim. The Eibusha creates the niv, the words or the fruits, which are the words that come out of a person's mouth. So niv, when a person speaks, there's air, there's blowing that comes out of his mouth, and that's what it means over here, niba, that you blew on the fire and you fanned the flames of the fire. Then the Mishnah said, lipsa ruach. If they brought the different materials were brought here, but the fire would not spread, but then a wind comes and blows, and that's what caused the fire to spread. So kulam peturin, all these people that brought the fire are going to be pot because the wind is the one that's spreading it. Tana Rabbanon in Abraise we learned liba velipsa haruach. If the person himself is blowing and fanning the flames of the fire, but also the wind comes, and the wind is also blowing and causing the fire to spread. So now you have two causes: the person and the wind. So if the blowing of the person himself is strong enough that it could fan the flames that it should spread, chayev. So then it's going to be chayev, even though together with his blowing, what also participated in the spreading of the fire is the wind. Okay, so now Taisus over here explains the case that we're talking about over here is the wind itself could not cause it to spread on its own without the person. It's the person together with the wind that's causing it to spread. But nevertheless, even though b'poil, the way it spread is by the participation of both his blowing and the blowing of the wind, but because his blowing itself could have caused it to spread, you are going to be chayiv. V'im lav, if his blowing itself cannot cause it to spread, it's only together with the kayach of the wind that it causes it to spread, then potter. So then you cause it to move a little bit, but it still wouldn't spread. It's only together with the wind that it spread, so therefore you're going to be potter for this. Not chayiv if what you did is only in assistance together with the wind. Fragt the Gemara now in this braise, but amai. When it says here that you blow it together with the blowing of the wind, you potter. Why you potter? Here the Gemara brings from the malacha of Zoyre on Shabbos. Lehevi kizoyre. Why shouldn't this be similar to the malacha of Zoyre, which is winnowing? When a person throws up the kernels in the wind, he wants to separate the peels, the chaff from the kernels. So you throw it up, and the kernels are heavier, and they drop back down where they are, and the wind blows away the peels. So this is a malacha of Shabbos. And veruach mesayatoi. And there, this is an action that the person does, but he could only do this action together with the wind that's helping him. And over there, the halacha is that he's chayiv for this malacha. So shouldn't we say the same thing over here? When a person is causing damage by blowing a fire and the wind is helping him and he could only spread together with the wind, he should also be chayiv. So Abaye answers that you're right, that really over here he should be chayiv. But hacha b'maya skinon, the case over here is kagayin sheliba mitzad echad v'libase ruach mitzad acher. That this person, he blew the fire in one direction, and the wind came actually and blew it in the opposite direction. So the wind was stronger than his blowing. So therefore, the wind, he did not in the direction that the fire ended up spreading. He's not participating in that at all, because the wind blew it in the opposite direction. That's when the Braisa is saying that you're going to be potter. Another pshat, Rava says, Kagoin sheliba beruach mitzuya, that he blew, and when he started blowing, there was a usual wind that was blowing. But then what happened is, then an unusual wind comes and blows it, this is something that the person didn't expect at all that would happen. So therefore, in such a case, because it's a ruach she'enim mitzuya that came, that a person can't expect, so that's different than by Shabbos, where a person's using the regular wind for the malacha of Zoyre. Here it's an unusual wind that came, so therefore the person doesn't expect this, there's no kavanah for this, and therefore you're going to be potter. Rab Zera says another pshat, kagayin the tzamre tzamuri, that over here, when it says that he's potter for blowing this fire, even though he blew it together with the wind, then in such a case, by the malacha of Shabbos, you are chayiv. Over here, he didn't blow. We thought he was blowing, but no, what the Braisa was saying, and when he's potter is, he was breathing into the fire. Breathing into the fire also creates a little bit of an air, but it doesn't really blow it, because it's like when a person, Rashi says, like a person's hands are cold, you breathe into your hands to heat up your hands. So over here, Tzamrit Tzamuri means he creates heat, but he's just breathing into it. So therefore, there is really no fanning the flames of the fire from the person. Therefore, he's going to be potter. Okay, so the point that you see from all these answers is, the Gemara is accepting the comparison from the Malacha of Zoyre and Shabbos to our case of the mazik of fire, and all these answers are basically saying, if it would be just like the Malacha of Zoyre of Shabbos, where he fanned the flames together with the wind, you would be chayiv. And the Gemara makes a distinction in three different ways why over here he didn't really do it together with the wind. But now the Gemara brings another answer that says that the whole entire comparison from the Malacha of Shabbos to our case of the fire that spreads is not a comparison at all. Ravashi says, Ki amrinon Zoyre v'ruach mesayate. When do we say this concept here? That the person is doing an action, and he has the assistance of the wind, that he will be chayev hanamililin Shabbos. That's only by Shabbos. Over there we say, even though it's not him that did the whole malacha himself, the malacha is done together with the wind that blows. Over there you chayev, because the meleches machsheves asra Torah. There, as long as you do an action and the intended purpose that you wanted that would come out of this, the result of the winnowing, that it separates, that's what your whole intention is, to use the wind for this. There the Torah says that you do the action with this intention, you chayiv, even though you have another assistance. But over here, when it comes to the mazik of spreading the fire. Over here, the machshava, the meleches machshava, that the person intended this to happen, is not the determining factor for you to be chayev. Over here, it has to be just your action yourself. So therefore, here we say grame b'halmohu. Here, since you blow, but your blowing itself would not do it. You need the wind to help you as well. So therefore, that's called a grame. You're just causing a damage, and grame ben izakim potter. When it comes to a damage, it has to be your action directly, and if there's another assistance with you, so over here, you're going to be potter. So therefore, there's no comparison of Shabbos to our case, b'chlal. Okay, the Mishnah continues with the halachas of the damage from fire. A person that sends out, he allows a fire to spread out. Now, what did this fire burn? The fire burnt wood, which naturally burns in fire. Or rocks, which doesn't really burn in fire, but it gets scorched from the fire. Or earth that gets scorched from the fire. Chayiv, you chayiv for these damages. Even though it's not something that really naturally gets burnt, you're still going to be chayiv. Shanama, the pasuk says kiseitze eish umatza, and the pasuk here spells out a few details that the fire that goes out and it catches on to kaitzim, thorns, or v'nechal godish, or a pile of grain gets consumed, or hakama, or the wheat or grain in the field when it's still standing, or yasada, or the field itself. In all these cases, Shalem Yishalem Hamaves Habeira. So the one that lit the fire is going to be chayiv for this. So here in the pasuk, you see it mentions all these different details that teaches you that you chayiv not just for something which is flammable and it gets burnt, but even rocks and things like that also. The Gemara is going to spell out the details. Amar Rav, so Rav explains, Lomali, the cost of Rachmana, why all these details? When the pasuk talks about the damage, the fire that spreads, it says kaitzim, thorns, godish, a pile of grain, kama, the grain when it's still standing in the field, and besada, and the field itself. Why all of this? Says the Gemara Tzirichi, it's necessary for the pasuk to say all of this. The cost of Rachmana kaitzim, if we just say that the fire spreads to a place of thorns, Hava mineh, I would think to say, what's the pasuk here saying? Kaitzim hu dechayiv rachmana. By thorns, the Torah is saying yechayiv mishum deshchiach eish gabayu, because it's common that fire spreads amongst thorns. A shchiach the pasha. And over here, if a person is allowing fire to spread over there, so what does that mean? So commonly, that would mean that the person is negligent about this. So over here, what the Torah is saying is, in thorns, this is a sign of real negligence. That yechayiv for. Avol godish, but if it's in a pile of grain, here it's not common that a person should be negligent about this and allow fire to spread there. The pasha, it's not common that this is a result of a negligence. Maybe over here I would say that the person should not be chayav because this I could see was more of an einus. So therefore the Torah has to say that even here as well, a person has to be careful, and if you allow the fire to spread there, it's also negligence. On the other hand, because of Rachmana godish, if the Torah would write that you only chayiv when you allow the fire to spread by a pile of grain, maybe I would say, Godish, chayiv rachmana. The pile of someone's grain that you burn, that you chayiv for. It's a very big damage, it's very valuable. If you allow your fire to spread and it burns someone's thorn bushes, hefsid mu'it, it's a very little value and very little damage, maybe this you're not chayiv for. So therefore the pasuk says, you chayiv for this as well. Kama lamali. Why does the Torah have to say that you chayiv if you burn someone's property with the grain that's growing and still standing in the field? So I would say the answer is, I learned from this, ma kama begodli, just like the grain that stands and is in the field and it's open and it's exposed. Av koil begodli. You only chayiv for the damage that your fire causes when it burns something which is open, exposed. That just excludes something that's hidden. That you burn something, then there's something that's hidden inside. That you potter for, as we had many times earlier, right in the Masechta. But here the Gemara brings the opinion that argues in this. So Rabbi Yehuda the Amar, the Mechayev that is, Rabbi Yehuda that says that you are chayiv aniskei tamim be'eish, even when something is concealed by fire, you still chayiv for that. So kama lamali. Why is the Torah saying kama, the standing grain in a field? Rabbis call bali kaima. What it's coming to say, any bali kaima, anyone that stands on their own 2 feet, like animals, things like that. So you chayiv for that as well, or like trees. Rashi says that's why it's coming to add kaima. But Rabbanon, and according to Rabbanon, the rabbis call bali kaima min Allahu. From where do they see this that you chayiv for burning not just the grain that's mentioned in the pasuk, but also bali kaima, ones that are standing, which are animals? Nafkaluhu, they learn it out from the extra word me oi, Bava Kama. So that extra word oi comes to add also other things that are standing. Rabbi Yehuda, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, that learns it out from the word kama itself, oi mi ba'alei l'chalik. The word oi is written in the pasuk to separate, that you're not chayiv only in a case where you burnt all of these together, but even if you burnt just one of them. Rabbana l'chalik minalahu, and where did Rabbana know this point that you have to divide and separate one point in the pasuk of the other? So nafkulu me'oy asada. Afterwards, it says in the pasuk the word oi again, or a field. So over there, that word oi comes to separate. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't dash in the second oi, because he says, Aidi, the kasar rachmana, oi. Hakama, it writes the word oi the first time, which is telling you to separate. So kasav ayasada, it writes the oi a second time as well, just as the style of the pasuk, it writes it similar. But there's no drasha from the word oyasada. Sadeh lamali. Why does the pasuk have to say that your fire burnt a person's field? What's added with this? When your fire went and scorched his property, he had a plowed property that was prepared to plant, and the fire goes over it. It doesn't really burn it, but it scorches it. Now it ruins it. Or sichsacha avanav, also it scorches rocks. For this you're chayiv as well. That's the limit of sada. Even though it doesn't burn properly, it's still chayiv. The Gemara, so if you have a bigger chiddush by sadeh, v'lichtav rachman sadeh, let the Torah write that you're chayiv for what your fire does to a person's property, v'lei boya hanach, and you don't need the others that say before. If you're chayiv just for the scorching of your fire, for sure you're chayiv when your fire burns and consumes. Because the Gemara no tzricha does have to write the other things before it writes sadeh, because the chas of rachman sadeh, if the Torah would just write that your fire burnt a sadeh, a field, then I would think hava minem mashe. When the Torah is writing sadeh, it doesn't mean the field itself, the actual plowed field or the rocks there. Maybe it means what's in the field, what that usually does burn and gets consumed, grain or something else that's in the field. And midiachrin eloi, but anything else you would not be chayiv for. So kamash malan. Therefore, the Torah first writes the other things, the kaitzim, the gadish, and the kama, and then it writes sadeh. So from this you understand that sadeh does not refer to what's in the field, but it refers to the actual field itself, the earth or the rocks that are there. So here the Gemara starts with an inyan of agadete that's learned out from this pasuk of kisei tzeish. Amar Rab Shimon bar Nachmani, Amar Rab Yonasan, Ein Poranos Balaylam. There's no punishment that comes into the world. Ela bezman shar rishayim ba'olam. Only when there are rishayim, wicked people in the world. But ve'ena mascheles, when the Eibishter punishes, the punishment doesn't begin. Ela min tzadikim tchila. The tzadikim get punished first, and the Gemara will soon explain why. Shenemar, and you see this here in this pasuk. The pasuk says kisei tzeyesh, a fire goes out, a fire to punish. Umotza kaitzim, and it catches on to thorns. So which means as follows: when is there fire of punishment in the world? When does it go out? When there are thorns that are there available for it, which are the rishayim. But the fire then, what does it burn first? The tzadikim. Shenema, as the pasuk says, v'nechal godish, and the pile of grain was consumed. So it says here a lashon avar, a past tense, v'nechal, that the grain was already burnt from before. V'achal godish lo'nemar, it doesn't say that the grain is burnt now, ela v'nechal godish, that it was already consumed from before, shenechal godish kvar. So you see, when the Eibishter punishes, it's caused by the rishayim, but the tzaddikim get punished first. The Gemara brings another source for this, Tana Rav Yosef. What's the meaning of the pasuk where it says, V'atem, le'teitzu ish mi pesach beisai ad baike. In the time of Makkes B'chayres, the pasuk says, nobody should leave the threshold of their home until the morning. Why is this? Since it was given permission for the destroyer, the one that's bringing the Makkes B'chayres, Eina mavchen ben tzadikim l'rishayim. No distinction is made between tzadikim and rishayim, so therefore nobody should leave their home. Not only this, the punishment begins from the tzadikim first. Shenema, as the pasuk says, v'chrati mimcha tzadik v'rasha. That I will cut down from you, and it says first the tzaddik and then the rasha. So now here the Gemara explains why this is so. Rav Yosef cried about this. Kula hai nami le'ayin doimim. This is to such an extent we say that tzaddikim have no worth, that when the Eibishter punishes, he punishes the tzaddikim first. Amalei Abaye. So Abaye explained and said, actually tivusu legabayu. This is something that's good for the benefit of the tzaddikim. Tichsev, as the pasuk says, ki mipnei hara nesaf tzaddik. Because of the evil in the world, the tzaddik, it goes away first, which means that the Eibusha does not want the tzaddikim to see the terrible things that are going to happen in the world and the terrible punishment, so he takes them away first so they shouldn't experience this pain. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Lo'olam Yekanis Adam B'chitoiv. A person should always enter into the city or into the place where of his lodgings when it's still kitoiv. Kitoiv means when it's still light outside. That's the pasuk refers to the light. Vayara Elokim is kitoiv. So you should enter when it's still light outside. Then the yetze b'chitoiv, and you should leave only in the morning after the sun comes up and there's light. Shanema, as we learned this also from the pasuk brought previously. Va'atem le'teitzu ish mi pesach beisad boike. Don't leave your house until it's morning and there's light outside. So Rashi here says the reason is mipnei mazikim v'alistim, in order not to get damaged or hurt or injured by mazikim, which are all kinds of shadim or listim or bandits that could attack you when it's dark outside. Tana Rabbanon, in a brayso we learned in connection to this pasuk, devabir, if there's a plague in the city, kanes raglacha, keep your feet in, meaning stay inside the home. Shanem avatam leteitzu ish mi pesach beisad boike. There by the plague of makis b'chayris, the Eibusha says that the Yidden should stay indoors. Vaymer, another pasuk where there's a source for this. Leich imi b'chadarecha osgar dal zasecha. Come with me into your room and lock your doors. Batcha, behind you. Vaymer, a third pasuk where it says this point, michutz t'shakal cherev. When outside there's a sword that is killing people, and when you're inside there's fear about this, you should stay indoors. So the Gemara explains why the Braisa brings three different sources for this. Why does it bring additional psukim? Because if you'll say the first pasuk that it says by Makis B'chayres, Hanamili Balelia, that's only Makis B'chayres, which is at night. But during the day, even when there's a plague, you could leave your home. Therefore, the pasuk continues and says, come into your room and lock your doors even in a time of daytime. If you'll further argue and say, when is it better to be inside, not outside? If inside you feel safe and there's no fear. When there's a sword outside on the street, but even inside there's also fear. So maybe kinafik when he goes out and Yosef beni inshi b'tzaf sabalma, and you're sitting amongst other people that will support you and to be together with others. Maybe that'll be better because sitting inside you're alone and you're so afraid. Tashema, therefore, we bring the third pasuk that says, even then, the shakal cherev, outside is a sword, and inside is fear, which means, afagav de mechadare meima, even when there's fear on the inside, but nevertheless, the shakal cherev. Outside there's a sword. Rava says the Gemara, Rava, in a time when there was anger of the Eibusha in the world, kavi, he locked up and closed his windows. Because he says, the pasuk talks about the punishment of the Eibusha in the world, and it says, Ki olam maves b'chalinenu, that the death comes up through the windows. So he would close up the windows. Tana Rabbanan, another brayso we learned a related subject, Rav beer. When there's a hunger in the city, Pazer raglocha, you should spread your feet, meaning you should run away, go to a different place. Shanema, as the pasuk says, by Avram Avinu, vayehi rav ba'aretz, vayered Avram Mitzrayim lager. So he left Eretz Yisrael and he went down to Mitzrayim, lager sham. Vayme, another source where it says that imamarnu nova yair. This is by the story in the Nach where there was Mitzrayim that were outside the city. And then they said, if we're going to go back into the city of Yerushalayim, v'harav beer, and there's a hunger of a masnasham. We're going to die there. So instead they said, let's go to the camp of Sancherev and see if we could save ourselves. So here the Gemara as well explains, why are we bringing a second source for this, that in a time of hunger a person should go away? Because if you'll say by Avram Avinu, when he left Eretz Yisrael for Mitzrayim, there he went down to Mitzrayim, so he went to a place where he wasn't putting his life in danger, so therefore he left Eretz Yisrael. But over here by these Mitzrayim, they went to the camp of Sancherev, and really there's a suffix, they're putting their life in danger, so maybe you would say that you should go back into the city. Therefore, we bring the second pasuk and we say that even in this case, when there's a hunger, you have to leave. And they said, let's go to Machna Aram, and that's our only chance. If we'll live, we'll live. Tana Rabbanan, another thing in connection to this, we learned in the Braisa Devabir. When there's a plague in a city, you don't walk in the street in the middle of the road. Because in that time, the Malach HaMavis is walking in the center of the road. The kivin, the yahivale, the shuse, because he was given permission to cause a plague, mazgi lehedya. He walks openly and directly in the middle of the road. Shalom bir. If there's a time where it's peace in the city and there's no plague, so then al yahalach betzidei drachim. Don't walk in the side and the corners of the road. Because the kivin the lester the shuse, since it's a time period where the malach hamavos does not have permission to go in the center, so machpir chavuya or mazgi, he goes in the sides and the corners, and that's where he hides himself. So therefore, a person should not go there. He should walk on an open place. Tana Rabbanan, another brayse we learned, deva bir, if there's a plague in the city, al yikanis adam yachid lebeis hakneses. He shouldn't enter even into a shul all by himself. Shemalach hamavos mafkid sham kelov, because the malach hamavos comes there and he hides there his utensils for his work that he does. But v'hanamili, when is there a danger? When there's no children that are sitting and learning Torah there, and and it's not a shul that has 10 people that come and daven there. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in Abraisa, klovim beichim. If you hear dogs that are crying, malach hamavos baleir, that's a sign that the malach hamavos is coming to the city. Klovim mesachakim. When you see the dogs that are playing around, that's a sign that Eliyahu Hanavi baleir, that Eliyahu Hanavi is coming with good news to the city. But v'hanamili, when is the sign of these dogs that are playing around a sign that Eliyahu Hanavi is coming? When it's something that's not caused by something natural by them. V'hanamili, the less puhu nekeva, when there's no female amongst them. But if there is nekeva amongst them, so then the playing around is not a sign for Eliyahu Hanavi. It's just that they're playing around. Yosef Ravami v'Ravasi kamed Rav Yitzchak Nafche. So Rav Ami and Ravasi was sitting in front of Rav Yitzchak Nafche. So Mar Amalei, one of them said to him, Leima Mar Shmaitase. The master should teach us a halacha. Umar Amalei, and another one said to him, Leima Mar Agadate. Teach us a Agada, a drush, a story or something that we darshan. So Pasach Leima Agadate, he wanted to begin first with saying an Agadate, a story or a drasha. V'lei Shavik Mar. The other one did not allow him. He said, no, I want you to first say an halacha. So Pasach Lemeim Shmaitas. So he says, okay, no problem. So he tried to say a halacha. V'lei Shavik Mar. The other one didn't allow him to say a halacha. So he couldn't share anything, not Agoda and not halacha. Amalehem, he said to his students of Ami and Avasi, what's happening here? I'll give you an analogy for this. Person that has 2 wives, achas yalda, one is young, v'achas zekena, one is older. Yalda, so the younger wife, malaketas levanis, takes out the white hairs from his beard, so he should look young like the young wife. Zekena, the older wife, malaketas leishachayres, wants him to take out the black hair, so he should look older, look more compatible to her age. Comes out that he's bald from this side and this side, because this is the famous expression, because each one is taking out the hairs to be compatible to them, so you end up with nothing. So here as well, he can't teach not a halacha and not an agada. But so then he said, you know what? He's going to say something which is going to have in it an agada and a halacha. I'm going to teach you something, a pasuk, which will be for both a agada and a halacha. The pasuk says, that if the fire goes out, then it catches on fire with the thorns. So what is this pasuk saying? So here the problem is, in the beginning of the pasuk it says, Teitzei. Teitzei sounds like me'atzma. It just spread, it went out on its own. Then at the end of the pasuk, when it says that the responsible party has to pay for this, it says, Shalem Yishalem Hamavir Esa Be'era. The one that lit this fire and brought it out, he's the one that has to pay. So is it something that's going out on its own, or is it something that the person that lit the fire here, he's bringing the fire and spreading it to another place? So first he answered this pasuk with a drosha, and then he answered al pi halacha. First, what's the drasha? Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Eibusha says, when you see the Beis HaMikdash got burnt, and it's burning on its own over here in this world, but the Eibusha says, Alai l'shalem es ha'be'eda shehev arti. I have to pay and rebuild the Beis HaMikdash that I have burnt. Ani tzesi eish b'tzion. I burnt the fire in Tzion, the Beis HaMikdash. Shenema, as the pasuk says, vayatzes eish b'tzion v'toicha yisodisel. That I brought the fire in Tzion and it burnt it and it consumed it down to its foundations. And Vani Asid Lovnoi Sabesh. The Eibusha says that he's going to rebuild the city of Yerushalayim with fire. Shenema, as the pasuk says, Vani Eyala Choymas Eish Saviv, that I will be like a pillar of, or like a wall of fire around the city. Ulekavedaya b'toicha, and my honor will be inside the city. So this is the drasha that he dashened. Then he said a halacha to answer this contradiction in the pasuk that in the beginning it says it spreads on his own, and then it says mavir esabeda, that the one that pays, he's the one that spread it. Pasuk starts saying that it's your money, your fire that you were negligent about, and then it just went out on its own, which would be similar like an ox of a person that he didn't guard and went out on its own. But then v'siyim beniske gufay. Then it finishes off regarding this fire with an expression that says that you spread the fire directly. What does this come to say? This comes to say, like Rabbi Yechanan's opinion that we had before in the Masechta, to tell you, ishay mishum chitzav, that you chayiv, when a fire that you light spreads, it's like you're throwing an arrow itself and aiming it, and it goes in a certain place. Over here as well, when the fire spreads, it's mamish like your arrow. Okay, the Gemara here continues, the agarate. This is any that continues over here all the way to the next Mishnah. You know what? I guess we'll continue this tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem.